living la vida low carb. This show is changing lives. We talking about your diet, trying to get you feeling right. Cut up them avocados, fry some eggs. Time to explore the longest running health podcast, hosted by Jimmy Moore. Time to give up the crappy garbage. We're getting into ketosis. Every day is a new step to your goal. Yeah, you're getting closer, motivated and focused. Don't stop, just go. Time to get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com.
So guys, that right there is Dr. Rebecca Warren. She makes it real easy to find her. She is Dr. Rebecca Warren over on Instagram. Rebecca Warren spelled RebeccaWarren. And she is a women's health specialist. I actually met you on Clubhouse last year. We did a bunch of Clubhouse rooms together, sharing the stage and educating. And I was just so impressed by all the things I was hearing, not just of the things you're teaching your patients, but also what you yourself have been through, which we'll get into here in just a moment. She is a thyroid expert. So all you people who say, Jimmy, help me with my thyroid. I'm like, I got the woman today. This woman knows just about everything, because you yourself, as you're going to tell in your story, actually had a thyroid scare with cancer, which then turned into a thyroidectomy, which has caused a lot of kind of personal issues for you, that you're now able to use that knowledge from your personal life and apply it to your patients. So welcome to my show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I know that was a whirlwind. When Clubhouse first came out, it was like hours and hours and hours. But I love doing that. I love doing stuff like this, because my hope is, like, I want to give as much information as possible. I want the information to be available, to be free, so that people that are ready to take control of their health, especially when it comes to their hormones, can do it. They don't feel afraid or hopeless, that they can start making changes today for their health.
Well, and people often blame their thyroid for a lot of things which have nothing to do with their thyroid. And we'll get into that here in just a moment. But first, let's hear that amazing story of yours, because were you already a doctor when the thyroid stuff happened, or did this thyroid stuff kind of precipitate you becoming your own student of your own health, and then, hey, I've already got most of this knowledge, let's go get the degree?
That's exactly it, Jimmy. So honestly, I also think the reason why I share so much is because I wish I knew then what I know now. But you can't change the past. You can use your pain for purpose, right? And so my story actually began when I was 16. I always share this because I'll tell you what. So I was 16 years old, walking out of a movie theater, and I had this severe chest pain to the point where I thought I was having a heart attack. I'd never been to the emergency room before. I fell to the floor in a fetal position. I get rushed to the emergency room, get on drip morphine because of how severe the pain is at 16. I remember coming to, my parents there crying, and the doctor tells my parents, like, you know, she has like 1,000 gallstones in her gallbladder. I remember thinking, like, what? And he's like, oh, it's okay though, because we can do what? We can just cut it out. And I always share that story because that's a big red flag. The gallbladder is very easy to take care of, right? We can cut it out, we can move on with our life, but it's a tip of the iceberg symptom for a lot of underlying issues, especially things like hormones, like estrogen, progesterone, and thyroid.
Right.
So I got it cut out. And I remember in my follow-up appointment, I thought to myself, something doesn't connect here. So I decided that I needed to get healthier. And to me, that meant losing some weight. I was 16. I went to my doctor. I said, hey, you know, after you checked my scar, everything was healing fine. I was like, you know, I feel like I need to change something about my life, maybe eat better, lose weight. And the doctor's like, yeah, let's finish up here and I'll give you something, right? It wasn't a drug, but he walked out of the room, got a Xeroxed copy of a food pyramid, which I know I'm aging myself by saying Xeroxed, but it was a copied, and it was black and white. It was a food pyramid with an article. you know what that is, Jimmy, right?
Yeah.
So he gave me the sheet, and I was like, okay, well, if he's not concerned and he doesn't think there's an underlying issue, then maybe I don't need to do anything. 3 years later, I'm driving in the car. I look over my shoulder, and my mom's like, there's a huge lump in your neck. And I'm like, okay. I go to the doctor, the first appointment, they tell me I had strep, sent me on my way. And I'm like, what? My mom's like, no, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
We go in, we do a needle biopsy, we do an ultrasound. And at 19, I'm sitting in the doctor's office. The doctor comes in, says, you know, I'm sorry to tell you this, but your daughter has cancer. My mom starts crying. And in that moment, it's like I left my body. And even my memories now, it's like I'm watching a movie that I was in. Like I was not there. I disassociated. And the doctor said, I'll never forget this because they still say this to the day. Today, they still say, well, you know, the good news is if there's a cancer to have, this is the good kind. If you want to have a cancer, this is the one you want to have. And I remember thinking, wow, I want to punch this guy. But like this, I don't get it. And the reason why they say, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I have a theory as to why they say it. They would say the same thing about prostate cancer for a guy. Oh, if you're going to get cancer, at least it's prostate cancer and not something worse. And I'm thinking, you're messing with a major function of a man, his manhood. And so it's like, same thing with you. Like they say that, I think, so it's not something that's like worse than it is. Oh, it's manageable. Yes. We can just take it out and everything's going to be fine. But everything wasn't fine, was it?
No, Jimmy, that's exactly it. Like, that's what a lot of people miss. Like, when the doctors miss that, like, it's not fine. You're cutting out a vital organ. And that's why, because they said, we can cut it out, we can give you radiation, and we can put you on a pill for the rest of your life. And I do want to point this out, that it wasn't until in 2017, even though it had been happening, they've been discussing this for years, my type of cancer, which is an encapsulated follicular variant papillary carcinoma, they changed the name to remove carcinoma, because they said cutting it out and putting radiation had more long-term, like, detrimental effects than leaving the thyroid in. And I want to say that because thousands and thousands, the number is rising every year of people that are going to be diagnosed with that. And that's what happened. They cut it out and they gave me high-dose radiation.
So, Rebecca, did they say why or how that cancer developed? I know cancers can develop spontaneously just out of nowhere and definitely at your age. But was there some causal factor that led to that?
No. The work that I do now has brought me around to a lot of information. And there's a doctor, Dr. Nikiforov, who's doing a lot of amazing work. And one really interesting thing is he looked at the genetics of, you know, the type of thyroid cancer that's really aggressive and the type of thyroid cancer that's benign. And what he found is that the more aggressive hasn't actually increased in incidence very much whatsoever, but the benign one has. And when interviewed, he said it has to do with carcinogenic toxicity in our environment. It's an environmental change.
Would that include 5G?
Don't even get me started on that. There's so my husband and I, that's been a whole conversation here at home. It's all these stressors that are passed just because of convenience with complete disregard for our health. Even things like amalgam fillings. I know you've talked about that on your show, right? Like, these mercury fillings have an affinity for the thyroid, and they're putting it in with complete disregard because it's in your mouth.
Yes.
Right? And I will tell you this. One thing I found is that when I started digging deeper and looking at my toxicity profile, I was full of mercury. I had so much mercury in my body, but I don't have a filling.
Wow.
My mom has a mouthful.
And there's not enough chelators in the world to help once you've got the toxicity. Yes, they help a little, EDTA and chelation, injections, but you don't want to have to go through all that. That's but the problem is it's so normal in society. People have become very comfortable with subnormal feeling in their health that they think that's the normal. It's shifted the goalpost of what normal is in people's health.
Yes, and that's it. We've been sold this idea, and I'm going to say this especially for women. There is gender bias in medicine. We have taken disease and dysfunction in women, and we've normalized it. Oh, your menstrual cycles are heavy, they're painful. That's because you have a period, menopause. You know, it's horrible. It's because it's menopause. We've taken these signs that our body is telling us that something is very, very, very wrong, and we've allowed so many people to suffer with it that we all look at each other and say, oh, well, yeah, okay, then it must be a part of getting older or being a woman, when in actuality, it's not. Because after I had my thyroid removed, I got on the medication, and I'm not going to lie, that first year, like first few months after I had my thyroid removed, I felt so much better because I did have an underlying thyroid issue. that I struggled with that no one gave my mom any direction on. But then at the year mark, I lost my period. I was weight loss resistant. I was doing CrossFit. And of course, I thought being healthy was, let me just be a vegan, right?
Yeah.
Let me be a vegan, right? So I did all this. I kind of punished my body because I'm like, I started having memory fog and like being depressed. I would wake up in the morning with this heaviness I couldn't shake, even though I was thankful for everything in my life. I had a good church. I was loving college. At night, I would lay up asleep. Like I would be awake, worrying about things that I had no control over. And when I went to my doctor, they would do these thyroid labs. And finally the guy said, you know, do you understand calories in, calories out? Like you keep talking about like you're not losing weight. Like, do you understand that? And I'm sitting there like, dude, I'm restricting. So I actually left and became raw vegan because I'm like, whoa, I got to take it. I got to punish myself. I got to decrease all these calories. And that wasn't it. It's because they were doing the wrong tests and they weren't even reading the tests they were doing correctly. So obviously it was my fault that I was feeling the way I was feeling. I was doing something wrong.
Yeah. If there's one thing about the mainstream medical system that just frustrates me is the assumption that you're doing things the wrong way. I just posted, right before we came on the air, I posted a little video on a reel, and it was this voiceover thing that said, you can eat 12, it's a doctor talking to a patient. You can eat 1,200 calories a day. And the patient says, okay, how many at night? And so, and the point is, they want you to eat a super low calorie, you know, and it's kind of ironic it comes from doctors because doctors don't know a damn thing about nutrition unless they've educated themselves outside of their medical training. And yet patients hear that from a doctor and the white coat syndrome and everything. They just automatically assume they know everything about everything related to your health. And unfortunately, in this context, they don't. And with chronic diseases, they don't. They know pharmacology and physiology through surgeries, but not really preventative measures, which is what you teach your patients now with managing their thyroid.
Yeah. And I want to bring up something because one of the most common questions I get asked online, people will message me because I have a free thyroid ebook at my website. They'll download it. They'll come back and be like, Dr. Rebecca, my doctor won't order the labs that I need to get. Or like, my doctor won't work with natural desiccated thyroid hormone. I'm like, what should I do? And I'm like, fire your doctor and find someone that's going to listen to the fact that you're still struggling, that you still have symptoms, that you don't feel right in your body. Find someone who's going to listen and work with you. And this is what I tell people. I hear it all the time. And I'm in the South. My doctor's so nice. Your doctor can be the freaking Mr. Rogers, but if you're dying slowly, if you're not living the life you're supposed to live, I don't care how nice he is. We have to acknowledge the fact that when you go to a doctor, because I will say, in my own health journey, I've been very cynical, very negative about doctors and the medical system. But I also have come to explain it in this way. Like, they have a toolbox that they're comfortable with.
Yes.
They have experience what they know. That's it. Why are you going in there asking them stuff they don't know? Like, you know, it's half them, half you. Don't go there. Look for resources, right, throughout.
Well, and the way that I describe, by the way, won't you be my neighbor? I tell patients, because I consider myself an empowered patient, an educated patient. I tell patients, look at your doctor like a consultant in a business. You hire consultants, come in, analyze what you see, give us your feedback, and then the people that own the business make the final decisions. But it's the other way around when you talk about patient-doctor relationships. Patients abdicate that power that they have, and they make the consultant the owner of the company, consultant in this case being the doctor, listen to what the doctor has to say, but what they say is merely their knowledge base of what they know, imparting it on you. You, at the end of the day, decide whether you take that medication, whether you do the things that they want you to do as far as like a surgery. You're the one that makes that choice. And yet people, they just willingly hand over all of that power to the doctors.
And I think we work in this system, especially within the medical system, that there's a lot of hopelessness, right? Like, I don't know if you hear this all the time, Jimmy. I don't know what the deal is with 60, But I keep hearing that, well, you're almost 60, you're just old, or you're 60, you're old. Like, it's like our whole life just goes downhill. It's like you're just getting older. I had people in their 30s. Well, my doctor says I'm getting older, and I'm like, you're 30. Like, what?
You know what that is? That is them checking out.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it that way, but a lot of medical professionals, that's a fallback on when they don't know answers. And they don't know answers because they don't have a totality approach, a functional medicine, holistic kind of approach of everything, of root causes of what's going on. And that's the frustrating part for patients, because a lot of patients have to rely on what the doctor is saying and they trust it. I mean, look at the last 2 years. This has all been based on basically, let's trust what the doctors are saying. And yet what the doctors say sometimes doesn't make sense.
No. And I want to say two quick stories to encourage people as they're listening to this. I fired my doctor at 20. It didn't come from a place of ego. I know better. I was 20. I didn't know what I was doing. I actually went to a chiropractor, a doctor of chiropractic, and that's what set me on this path, right? Where he told me my body was created to heal itself. I can get better. I just got to find out the cause. And when I fired my doctor, it was out of desperation. If I had not fired my doctor, I walked in the next doctor. This guy didn't really spend like a lot of time with me, but I walked in as a 20-year-old. I said, this is what's going on. I did this research on my own, and I would like to try this. I read that someone said that you do this, natural desiccated thyroid hormone. That's what I want to try, and I would like to get blood work. He goes, okay, tell me your symptoms. Okay, yeah, we can do that. Let's do it. We'll follow up. And it was so different for me versus someone else telling me that, like, oh, no, everything's fine. So I'm 20 years old, not right now. I know I look like it, but
you look so 20.
Thank you. But I did it. You can. And the second thing I want to share is that you don't have to know everything. You don't have to be an expert, but you are an expert on your body.
Yes.
You've lived in there for decades. You know that something doesn't feel right. This isn't what it felt like to live in your body. And this is the story I want to share. My father had suffered a brain aneurysm like 9 years ago now. All the nurses were amazing, the doctors. But one really eye-opening thing that happened was when we arrived, my sister and I arrived, they gave us a sheet every day of all the drugs he was on. And we're like, wow, this is a lot of drugs. And all we did is we just asked questions. We weren't mean about, we were like, hey, we want to know what this is for. We'd like to know what this is for. Well, if this is for this, does he need to be on both of it? By the end of the week, he was on 10 different medications. By the end of the week, they're like, oh, no, actually, he doesn't need this. Oh, actually, yeah, since he's taking, by the end of the week, he was on 3 or 4. And it was so shocking for us because we didn't know the drugs. We weren't doing it in a way to be like, we know more. He was in ICU, right, in neuro ICU. It was just we having a conversation and them taking a moment to look again and say, actually, we don't need to do this. Just having questions and conversations, and no one should ever make you feel bad because you're asking questions about your health.
Right. And unfortunately, I think a lot of, especially older doctors, they don't like the internet because it has basically empowered a lot of people with information that then they come to the doctor. Now, yes, there's people that are smug when they go see their doctor. Yeah. Don't be smug. Be confident. Yeah. Print out studies. Studies mean more than an article on some random page that you read. But yeah, we can be educated and not have a background in medicine. And I liken myself to that as well. It's like I'm very educated in a lot of things about health, but I don't pretend like I know more than my doctor, but I say, hey, have you heard about this? And I remember talking to a PA, a physician assistant one time about nutrient deficiencies and how they could have been contributing to something I was dealing with. And she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Tell me more. Like, she wanted to learn. So just go in with the mindset of maybe you will teach your doctor or PA or nurse something that they haven't heard before. So that maybe the next patient gets to benefit from that new knowledge.
Exactly.
Did you go keto and thought you had to give up wine? Well, let me introduce you to Dry Farm Wines. It is the world's first sugar-free alcohol that is lower than your typical wines, organic, made at local farms that do it the right way. Most of the wines that you buy are from 3 really big companies, loaded with additives and preservatives, so many dozens of those kinds of things. You don't want all that junk in your wine. So go to dryfarmwines.com/Jimmy and they will ship you these wines. And just because you listen to this podcast, Dry Farm Wines is going to give you a bottle in your first order for just 1 cent. Go to dryfarmwines.com/Jimmy and you will get your bottle of wine for just 1 singular penny. Go check them out. Dry Farm Wines, you guys. It's wine o'clock somewhere. Let's go get some wine.
You gotta understand that, like, you deserve to be respected. You know, one of my most recent posts, I was very shocked how much people were commenting on it. I got messages, then people reposted it, and I read those comments. It was a mug. Yep. Please do not confuse your Google search with my medical diagnosis.
Yeah.
And the reason why that pissed me off, just because the mug pisses me off, but it was because it's from a thyroid surgeon, right?
Yeah.
And my specialty is dealing with people post-thyroidectomy that have suffered. I mean, you would understand how many women are crying like, oh my gosh, you understand, it's not all in my head. And so here's this doctor that's telling you to not, like, you can Google search PubMed, Science Daily, Scientific American, or do DuckDuckGo or whatever. Alternative, yeah. But it's wild to me. What does it cause you to have a conversation with someone? And then someone commented that they were like, well, there's dangerous information out there, especially in Facebook groups. But when your doctor shuts you down and does not allow for conversation, then people are looking in other places for answers. And I will tell you that there's a website called Stop the Thyroid Madness. It's ran by patients, right?
Janie Bothorpe. I had her on my podcast over a decade ago talking about this.
Her website and it wasn't research based. It wasn't like, well, now it's completely different than what I came across. Like it's been 16 years. So, but it was like, oh, I saw these people that said, I felt X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I feel that way. And they're like, and this is what I did. And I'm like, I'm going to go do that. And then I started getting into the studies and it was proven, but the information, we should be able to have this discussion, especially when it comes to the thyroid. Let me go and tell you, just because they're endocrinologists doesn't mean they know anything about how to help you with your thyroid. I've seen OBGYNs give more help to women I've worked with than the endocrinologists that they're seeing. The biggest thing is this: be well informed, trust yourself, like trust what you know is, you feel off in your body, and find someone that you can have a conversation with. And then the final thing I'll say is, we know that these doctors, they have their specialty. We're living in a world that you can work virtually. Like I work virtually with clients. There's so many there's people out there that you then hire on into your team to be what real health is. Get down to the cause, how to support your body for healing, how to remove stressors. Don't expect that from your doctor. If you're on a medication, go to the doctor. You need to do tests, do that. But assemble a team around you.
Which is why I think functional medicine clinics are the hottest growth kind of in the medical industry right now. And a lot of them doing online consultations, kind of like what you do in your business. Again, if you joined late, guys, Dr. Rebecca Warren is who's here today. Dr. Rebecca Warren over on Instagram. But you don't have a thyroid anymore. It was completely taken out because of the cancer. I assume all the cancer stayed away and everything's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything is gone. Yeah, like, I mean, I don't have any thyroid gland. And this is the crazy thing about thyroid cancer. I want to make sure people understand is that, number one, you will feel fine. A majority of the people I talk to, even in my own experience, you'll feel fine and sit in your doctor's office and hear you have thyroid cancer, right? Most people don't even know what a thyroid is or where it's located when they say this or say that they have a problem, right? And then, the second thing that's really crazy about thyroid cancer is, the one test that we have right now is like the needle biopsy, going and getting cells. But a majority of the time when they pull out cells, it'll be inconclusive or they're not quite sure for so many patients. But you know what they still recommend? Just cut it out. No, they say cut it out. Oh no, they just cut it out. Like just get rid of it.
Wow.
They don't even like give like a treatment option, which is crazy to me because they're like, it's a sort, just cut it out and then we'll do tests. And I've had people come back and be like, oh, they didn't show any cancer in it, but they said it's still a good thing because the thyroid would have kept growing. How wild is that? Think about, I think you have brain cancer. Let's cut off a piece of your brain to see, oh, there's nothing there. It's fine. And that's what's happening with thyroid cancer right now.
Brooke just said, this was me. That's what they did to her.
Yeah. And you don't hear about it. People don't talk about it until you're there. And then when you're there, when you get that, cancer, then it's fear. It's fear. Because first of all, you hear the C word, which is why I appreciate so much the work that Dr. Nikiforov is doing. Because you hear cancer and all you keep thinking is, well, there's no other option. You have to cut it out. They don't tell you change how you eat. They don't tell you detox. They don't tell you this is what comes about it. This is other tests, nutrients, iodine deficiency or too much. They don't tell you anything, but you have cancer and you got to cut it out. So out of fear, which you should never make medical decisions out of fear or hopelessness, but out of fear, you go through with it. And most people don't fully understand what they just went through until years down the road. And then they're sitting in consults with me crying like, I just didn't know and I didn't understand, but this is the only option I had.
So Rebecca, educate me a little bit, because we know type 1 diabetes is, say, an autoimmune of the pancreas. It doesn't make insulin anymore. So now you become insulin dependent. If they take your whole thyroid out, like you're forced, like a type 1 diabetic needing insulin, you're forced to have to take exogenous sources of the natural desiccated pig thyroid. What's that? Armor, I guess, is one of the name brands.
Armor, West P, West Thyroid. There's a few different options. Yeah.
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 So is that a necessity? Once the thyroid is removed, you have to take this the rest of your life, because the body can't make thyroid hormone anymore.
It doesn't have the tissue. It's not. Yeah. No. And the problem too is that, so we have more information on people that are living without insulin, right? With thyroid, there aren't any long-term studies. People aren't looking into it because you're not dead. You haven't like died, you're fine, you're cancer-free. They don't look into it further. But the same way, and this is for like, let's say you get your thyroid cut out, or let's say you have a Hashimoto's for so long that the thyroid tissue is destroyed, right? Yes. What they do is put you on one dose and send you on your way. And that's it. And it's like, but this thyroid is so dynamic. It releases more thyroid hormones, less thyroid hormones. Some seasons you're more stressed out. You need more help. If you lose weight, you need less. It's this ebb and flow that you're not taught. And for me, it's been 16 years. Every 5 years, it just happened recently. It's like a reset where I get on a thyroid med, and this can happen to people with Hashimoto's, people that are in long-term use of thyroid. It's hormesis. You're meant to change things up. What ends up happening is every 5 years, I'll be on a medication. It works. And I see this with people that have been living with this long-term, 10, 20, 30 years. I've worked with people, so many different backgrounds. But for me, 5-year mark, it stops working. It's as if my body doesn't respond to the medication and I got to start over and dosing and stuff.
Is it an adaptation thing that's causing that? What's going on there?
I think it is an adaptation thing. I think the body, I don't fully know, because again, when I started looking into this, there's no information out there. I know that it happens with me. I know it happens with the people that I've worked with, where they're like, I don't understand. I was doing great and then I wasn't. And we do blood work and their thyroid, like, they just don't respond. They switch their medication or switch their source, and then they're feeling better again. It's body's adapting, and that's why we have hormesis. That's why we change things up, right? But we don't have that guidance within the thyroid community.
And one of the challenges too is mainstream medicine is so in love with Synthroid, which is kind of the synthetic thyroid, as opposed to the desiccated pig thyroid, which seems to be a little closer to what human thyroid glands would be producing. Why? What's the deal with Synthroid?
So the idea with Thyroid, first of all, they had a monopoly on the market. Like, I have been tracking them for the last decade. I mean, they were ruthless, and they went after it, right? They became the best thing you could take. And for so long, they were successful because there was so much like negativity around natural desiccated thyroid hormone. So this idea is that T4, when a doctor puts you on T4, they're betting on the fact that you're going to be able to convert it. So predominantly in the liver, digestive system, kidney, smaller areas in the kidney, and a few different other areas. And so when they put you on it, they're like, well, you got a liver, you got a gut, like you're going to convert it. But when you go hypothyroid, a majority of people have digestive issues. Their liver is clogged up. There's stored, sugar in the liver. Like these organ systems are not functioning optimally. So they're actually not converting it, and they never know that they're not converting it because doctors are not testing T3. The assumption is it just happens. We don't need to test it. Well, you don't know if it happens unless you test. And the second thing is the thyroid does make predominantly T4, but our body's intelligent. It still makes some T3. We still make some. So this idea that to only be T4 only, and I do have some people, I've had a small population throughout the years that have been on Synthroid and they've been converting it and they feel fine. It's like, okay, cool. But a majority of people have underlying issues that are stopping the conversion process from happening.
Yeah, then there was a brouhaha over the desiccated pig thyroid, the Armour medication, when they changed fillers. They changed from one filler to another filler. This is a few years back now, but they changed it overnight, and all these thyroid patients were going, wait, I don't feel so good all of a sudden. What the?
Listen, I think this is where my cynicism and like negativity with the medical system, like being involved with a drug and having to go to the pharmacy and go to hospitals and seeing with my eyes now, like how broken that system is. Like they treat it as if it's no big deal. I've gone to a pharmacy. My husband is not allowed to go with me anymore because there was a few times where I think was going to beat someone up. Because one of the times they just switched my thyroid med. They switched it, right?
Wow.
Like I knew I had worked hard to get to a certain dose, and it was a natural desiccated, and they tried to give me generic, the T4 and T3, right? And I'm like, I can't do this. Oh, it's the same. No. My body is unique. And so they'll change things up. They'll move things around. I've had doctors tell me, I had a functional medicine doctor tell me that I can go a few days without it, which is wild. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. But yeah, Armour thyroid, there's something really strange that happened. I don't know if you heard about, is it Nature Thyroid?
Yes.
Nature Thyroid. That was the cleanest med on the market. Like it was the cleanest. The pharmaceutical company, you would see their social media posts. They really encouraged people to take care of themselves. It was the cleanest. People started getting on it. I told people about it so that they could talk to the doctor about it. And then all of a sudden, they had an inspection on their mechanical stuff. That's what they said. And they had to update everything. And it was taken off the market. You couldn't get it anymore. Like and it took years for them to really start producing. And now people are saying it's not the same. I think there's definitely something going on there when you see all these people leaving things like Armour and Synthroid to something that's more natural and a smaller pharmaceutical company. So it's crazy what's happening out there. You got to keep an eye on it.
Well, this is why when I started talking about low carb and ketogenic diets, it's like there's people that don't want that information out there because they know it's going to keep people off of medication. We've even seen it with the pandemic. Certain drugs have been very taboo as therapeutics because, oh no, we want them to do another drug, another thing, not those things. And so it's not unprecedented in medicine that happens when something new and effective comes along that then makes all the other things obsolete. They have to shut that down, which is, it's crazy to me. If it's going to help the patient, if it's truly about health, and I guess that's the question, is it truly about health or is it about something else? But if it's truly about health, why wouldn't you want all the best options at the forefront?
Absolutely. I mean, Jimmy, not to sidetrack this conversation, this morning before my consults, there's 100 doctors that stood in front of the Senate to talk about COVID early treatments and studies from around the world. Like they literally stood there and talked about studies. They showed data information. This is the second time they've done that. And you sit there and you hear these doctors. These weren't just doctors. Their credentials weren't, oh, they went to this medical school, they did resident here, and now they're practicing. These doctors involved with studies, epidemiology, virology, immunization, like they had this background, and they're standing in front of the Senate saying, our government, our protocols, things that are established, it's being dominated by pharmaceutical companies.
Yes.
Why aren't doctors able to practice in a way? Why aren't doctors doing this? And so this is across the board and everything. I listen to that and I just get this fire inside of me to like speak more, right? Because it's what you just said. It's why aren't doctors doing this? Why is this information? Why are they fighting so hard if it's helping people? Why if a patient tries Armour Thyroid and their life is completely changed, why don't you think, whoa, what's here? Or what, I get this all the time. You probably hear this too, like with low carb and fasting and, you know, all of this stuff, like they'll go back to their doctors. They've been stuck for years. They go back, they see amazing results. And the doctor's like, oh yeah, keep doing what you're doing. And then they leave. And it's like, well, no. Don't you want all of your patients to see this? Don't you want to know? Don't you want to do this for everyone?
No.
And it's this big disconnect there. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I didn't tell you guys earlier. Rebecca's a big fan of low carb ketogenic diets and fasting. Implements those, helps especially women know when the right timing is to fast and when to add in more carbs and all the stuff. So go follow her. I want to learn more about that. But we have some questions that came in and some things. Keto Patra bought a badge. Thank you for that, Keto Patra. I have hypothyroidism. My TSH is low. My T3 is 1 point in the normal range. A1C is 6.3, which is a bit elevated, closer to type 2 diabetes. I'm so tired all the time, she says.
So you're 1 point in to the T3?
Yeah, I think she's saying it's on the low end of normal.
Okay.
1 point in of normal.
Oh, really? Okay. So there is a difference between, of course, everybody's different, and we got to figure out, is there thyroid antibodies, whatever. So a few things to take into consideration. Why? Because this is going to tick off some registered dietitians out there, like, you know, thyroid health coaches. This is one of the reasons why doing low carb, high fat, good quality fat can be beneficial for people that do have some underlying thyroid issues. That number one, not just being out of range with T3, but even being on low end of the range for T3 will cause issues, will cause symptoms, not just of fatigue, but some of the major symptoms is depression, anxiety, digestive issues, constipation, and even difficulties metabolizing carbs. So you're more prone to have higher cholesterol and higher blood sugar because T3, there isn't a cell in the body that's not affected by T3. All of your cells need it. It goes to the mitochondria, creates energy, ATP, so that your cells can do what it needs to do. So a lot of times, one of the reasons why people can feel major benefits, especially if they're struggling with getting their thyroid on their track, is because they're giving their body a break of over-consuming carbs because the body can't handle it until they can get to adequate levels of those thyroid hormones. And so I want to say again that subclinical hypothyroidism is a major thing right now.
Yes.
Being in the 2s, being in the lower 3s, if you're out of ketosis, can create a lot of symptoms, but your doctor will look at that and say, no. The second thing I'll say, and then I'll wrap up with this, is that thyroid stimulating hormone is a pituitary hormone. It functions off of this negative feedback loop. So the point is that if you don't have enough thyroid hormone, the idea is that your pituitary is going to register that and then release more, right? But we do know that the pituitary has more of a sensitivity to T4, not necessarily T3. So that's where we can see a lot of issues, 2 different areas. We can see a lot of issues with conversion issues and not registering in that negative feedback loop. Or another thing that doing ketosis, low carb, getting that blood sugar and control can help with is cell receptor sensitivity. A lot of people have their cells are just not well. Those 2 layers of lipid around the cells are not binding up those hormones, and it's just not getting into the cell. So that's a few different things to look at further.
Yeah. A lot of people ask me, Jimmy, how do you get such good deep sleep? Well, there's a lot of things that I do, but one of the newest things that I recently added is this upgraded magnesium from a company called Upgraded Formulas. Go to their website, upgradedformulas.com, and you can learn all about this nano technology that they use for this particular mineral of magnesium. Again, it's called Upgraded Magnesium, and it's got all the different forms of magnesium in it using the nanotechnology so it gets absorbed a lot better. Guys, I have seen my deep sleep improve by as much as 30 to 40% simply by adding in this product along with sunshine exposure, darkness in the room, cooler temperature, all of the things that I always have done. So again, upgradedformulas.com is the website. Go check them out. So Rebecca, a lot of people ask me questions about ranges because when they go to their doctor, oh, I'm in range, or this is the range. The doctor says everything's okay, but I still feel like crap. This is what Janie Bothorpe was talking about in a lot of her work. Are there functional ranges that are better? And I guess I should ask also, are a lot of the thyroid labs standardized, or are there so many different ones that it's hard to come up with what ranges would be normal and optimal, I guess would be the better word?
Well, in the end, what I say is the most optimal range is wherever you feel well. And I'll say the reason why is because of this. Functional medicine has done a fantastic job at really changing the tide for people in regards to blood work. So before, like, I'll give you an example. TSH can go from like a 0.5 to a 4.5, right? And then functional medicine came in and said, this is too wide.
Yes.
But now the issue is that when we start restricting it too much, we don't allow room for variables. And I'll share some of those variables, right? Because keto is one of them. So we know with functional ranges, the studies are there that TSH should be under a 2.5.
Yeah.
We know that free T3 for individuals that are eating normal amounts of carbs and are well, they need to be, I'll give you a range. Free T3 for me needs to be 3.1 or above. But within functional medicine, 3.1 is too low. They would be like, okay, go to 3.7. Well, the one thing we have to take into consideration, which a lot of people are doing, is that if you go low carb, you'll convert less.
Yes.
So there's a relationship there. And that's why pay attention to stalling of progress, right? Or to seeing changes within your body.
When I was writing this book, Keto Clarity, the whole question about will keto diets lower your thyroid function? I remember asking a medical doctor, I think it was Dr. Ron Rosedale, and he said, it's not a lower function. It's just it's a better function. Like you don't have as much need for that. When you eat a better quality diet, you don't have as much things that might be exacerbating it, where the T3 would be needing to be higher, I suppose. And so context is everything. And I love your approach of how do you feel? What ranges are optimal for you is how do you feel with the ranges you have? And if you're off, then you know something's off about those numbers.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, people have used studies where they found that there is this decrease of conversion when you go low carb, but these studies aren't saying why it's happening. They're telling you what's happening.
Yes.
And when they see what's happening, they assume it's a negative thing.
Yes.
But then when you look at studies, especially when they do like obesity studies, they've done studies where people lose weight in a healthy way and their T3 naturally comes down even though they have improvement of symptoms. And then when you look at those studies, you're like, well, maybe this is a good thing, right? It's understanding that there's an ebb and flow, especially when it comes to our hormones.
They do the same thing with cholesterol, Rebecca. It's like, oh, LDL cholesterol goes up when you eat keto. And it's like, okay, but triglycerides came down significantly. HDL went up significantly. Inflammatory markers all came down. Insulin came down. Blood sugar came down. But one little marker goes up and you go back crap crazy? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly, it's just understanding this ebb and flow. I will say I personally do like to get thyroid labs done on a refeeding day or refeeding couple of days to see in the presence of an insulin response if your body's going to convert, right? And the idea is because it is possible when it comes to thyroid hormones to be chronically low carb and not allow the thyroid to kind of rebound with the refeeding of good healthy carbs. And I usually say a big red flag is if you've been low carb or keto for a really, really long time, you're going to see that low T3. But when you start seeing that T4 start trending down, then that's kind of like, all right, let's refeed and let's get some blood work done and see what's going on there.
Yes. We had another comment question. Florify often says, my functional medicine doctor kept telling me I had sleep apnea. Meanwhile, I had malignant pap carcinoma 2 years after dealing with them, pushing the sleep apnea. They had me do the biopsy, and they told me the results in between patients. So it's yet another kind of failure of the mainstream medicine system failing this person.
And I want to say this, like, because nodules are a big thing right now, and they're going to continue to be a big thing, especially in the presence of nutrient and mineral depletion in the foods that we're eating and toxicity. It will continue to be an issue, right? Sorry, I had to plug in my phone. I don't know what happened to the battery. So that's why
I saw you moving. I saw it moving. I was wondering.
I'm like, I don't know what happened there. But that being said, you know, two things. A majority of these nodules are good. I know, and I bought them and then I lose them. I blame my kids on that, but I need to do better with that, right? So, you know, these nodules are because of, so we see a nodule on our thyroid and we think that's the problem. That's the symptom of an underlying issue. Now, a majority of them are going to be benign, but they will continue to grow if the underlying issue is not addressed. This, you know, nutrient, you know, depletion, whether it's gut related, that's making it exacerbated, whether it's autoimmune and toxicity. And so that's why doctors are not going to tell you anything useful when you get a diagnosis with something. What doctor's going to tell you, like, yeah, this is how you detox, or this is how you increase your mineral status and get retested and let's follow up. That conversation is not happening, but nodules will happen. It's an adaptive thing that your thyroid does. They've seen it in studies over and over again through the years. They've done autopsies on people that died fine, just naturally, and they had nodules. You know, it's a symptom of support that your body needs and stressors that need to be addressed.
Yes. Another question, nutrition, mindset, movement. Could it be inconsistency in the Armour thyroid medications? My TSH was 16. Now it's 11. Is that possibly a reason why there could be changes that happen?
So let me just go ahead. I don't know you. I can't give you medical advice, all that.
Right.
That TSH is yelling major hormone issues. Major.
Yes.
So that needs to be addressed. And it could be inconsistencies with Armour thyroid. I am seeing more people, and I would say it's been like the last 5 years or so, that are reacting or having these odd symptoms. And I think it has to do with the fillers, and it kind of goes away when they switch to something that's more natural. So it could be the inconsistencies within that, because there's been a lot of recalls on both Synthroid and Armour thyroid.
Yes. They did ask what thyroid med could you suggest?
So I think you've just got to experiment, and that's why you need a doctor that's going to listen to you, because when you go in and you want to try something, first thing I'll say is the majority of the people I work with do better on natural thyroid hormones, right? Those individuals that say they don't, what I find is there is no direct conversion amongst these medications. I know there's charts out there, and they'll be like, oh, if you're taking this, take this. No. You have to change the dosing frequently at the beginning. And by frequently, it's probably like 6 weeks, depending on, you know, what you're on and who you're working with. I do it differently when I'm working one-on-one with someone. But if you're changing meds, or if you're changing dose and you're not seeing your doctor every 6 weeks until you feel better, that's a big red flag, right?
Yeah.
So it's finding the right dose for you, because most people that don't feel well on natural desiccated thyroid hormone, when they come from Synthroid, is because the doctor didn't tweak it enough for them, right? Right now, I will say this: number one, Armour thyroid. Number two, NP thyroid. See what's available of Nature thyroid, or WP thyroid. I would start NP, Nature, or WP for myself. Now, this is a whole nother world for those that do have a thyroid, is using grass-fed beef glandulars for thyroid hormones.
Yes.
There's a lot of companies out there super clean fillers. There's things like Thyrovans and Thyroid Gold, but then there's like companies like Ancestral Supplements or Heart and Soul that will have grass-fed beef thyroid. And I've had many of people that have been on medications for decades. They're not going to be able to come off of it because of how long they've been on it. That can go to glandulars, and they love it.
So, Rebecca, a lot of people buy cow shares, and maybe part of their cow share, they get the thyroid. Could you have little slivers of the thyroid from the animal?
Yeah, I think it's worth experimenting with, but I would actually recommend that for people at the beginning that need some type of support. Right. Not people that, have autoimmune for like 5+ years or been on medication or without a thyroid, because that'll be a little bit hard. But there is a really interesting, there's an ebb and flow in thyroid hormone release, like a check and balance, where if you do take too much, you have a backup system, reverse T3, that can deactivate T3. And if you don't have enough, you see this reverse T3 turn into T3. Right. So you have this kind of backup system. Because I had someone like, well, if you take glandulars, especially from like a company like that, there's variations in regards to those glandulars. Well, no, they're not medications, first of all. Second of all, like strengthens like. I love utilizing organ meat. But also you have this check and balance that allows for little variables as you're utilizing thyroid glandulars.
Yes. Darlinka says, what was the name of the doctor you mentioned? Because you talk really fast. Was it Dr. Nikki Fowler?
So like it's Dr. N-I. So this is a cool thing. Dr. Nikiforov. But just Google. I know doctors hate that. Or DuckDuckGo. There's an LA Times article or New York Times article. Just look up thyroid cancer, no longer cancer. And they did an article on his work and renaming and reclassifying thyroid cancers to not include the C word. So you can see his information on there, and there's videos of him discussing this and research articles and stuff like that.
Yes. Florify often had a follow-up. So is it porcine is not dangerous? Question mark.
Well, I'm going to go back to this whole thyroid thing, right? If you need hormones, like in this medical system, it's like choosing the lesser of the evils, right? Trying to figure out, they all suck, right? But you need it, right? If you need hormones, you need hormones. And that was the biggest issue that I had is, this is coming from conventional pigs, probably really toxic. And
yes,
but that's all I had.
Yes.
Right? And that's the problem. And that's why I do like these companies that are developing grass-fed beef thyroid with clean fillers. Because the truth is, Jimmy, the pharmaceutical companies should be looking at how to create cleaner things with lesser reactions, but they're not, because they have a really good product on the market right now, according to them. So pig thyroid, it's probably really toxic.
So Rosa chimed in, yes, I have heard that consuming organs of an animal can help your organs as well. And I guess that applies to more than just the thyroid. Lots of things. A lot of people eat pancreas for the same reason. It kind of gives support to your own. And it's just amazing. Like, we've gotten away, and meat, and especially in animal foods, have been so vilified that people are scared half to death, even of taking desiccated pig thyroid. Because what does a vegan do that comes to you and says, hey, I want to help fix my thyroid? And you're like, okay, take desiccated thyroid. It's like, how do you have that conversation?
Well, most of the people that come see me know exactly where I stand about certain things. And most of the people that come see me, they're like, I want to do whatever it takes, right? And when we talk about the benefits, I have some that are still stay vegetarian, and we work with them and try. But when you're not eating enough fat, when you're not consuming enough protein, when you have a decrease of nutrient consumption, a lot of them are like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to be well. And so they do whatever they need to do.
Yes. Do what you got to do. That's the motto of every patient that I hope listens to my podcast. Do what you got to do to take care of your health, and don't just blindly trust what doctors tell you. Because 16-year-old Rebecca Warren, good thing she kind of bucked the trend of that by the time she was 20 and said, enough.
Mm-hmm. No, that's exactly right. You've got to know this. And again, I'll say, like, I do have this free lab ebook because I know we're getting a lot of questions about labs at drrebeccawarren.com. But again, I'll say this too as well, Jimmy, is like, when you get labs done, get copies of all your labs. There you are. Yeah, so get copies of all your labs. Keep a binder so you can see the times. There you go. So you can see the times that you feel better and the times that you didn't, and what you were doing then, so that you can implement that and support your body in that way. Because in the end, it's up to you, right? Like, in the end, you have to be the best advocate. And I'll say this too. We haven't touched on this yet. I always say it's like a three-legged stool when it comes to the thyroid hormones, because a lot of people come in to see me and they're like, I have thyroid issues. And I'm like, well, you've only had thyroid issue for 2 years. You've had adrenal issues for 10 years. Yes. Or you've had sex hormone issues for 15 years, right? You can't have a dysfunction within one of those without affecting the other ones.
Right.
And so one of the biggest things that can sabotage being able to feel well on the right dosing for you when it comes to thyroid hormones is an adrenal that's dysfunctional. So that's something really important to remember and to keep into consideration.
As with everything in the body, it's all interconnected. It's why we talk about insulin being the master hormone. And if insulin's off, why wouldn't you see all these other parts of your health get off as well? So Rebecca Warren is her name, you guys. Dr. Rebecca Warren. Go check her out over on Instagram, Dr.Rebecca Warren. And yeah, she's got a nice little link tree there that if you want to get her free Optimal Thyroid Labs ebook is there. She has a great Facebook page that you can go on there. You do a podcast with Dr. Mindy called the Receptor podcast. Do you still do that?
No. I got interviewed.
Oh, you were.
So I have a radio show. Yeah. They usually
I'm gonna show up on that one. I was on Jimmy Moore's podcast.
Yeah, there you go. I'm gonna link it up. Yeah, I just try to because right now we have a brick and mortar. I do virtual coaching and consulting. Right now it's word of mouth.
Yes.
And because of the pandemic, we've had to hire, and that's just been chaotic. And so our online presence has kind of slowed down as we've dealt with having to adapt to this influx, both in our clinic. And so I just push everywhere I'm on. So if people are looking for information, go here, watch this video, watch this. And usually they can peruse around, those links and find more helpful information from everyone who's interviewed me.
Exactly. So Florify often was like, can we see you from Texas? I assume you see patients from all over the United States, right?
Yeah. Worldwide now, New Zealand, Australia, London. Yeah. So, that's
all over the world.
Yeah. All over the world now, which is really cool. But yeah.
Yes.
Anything to help people.
Well, Rebecca, this was a long time coming because I've known you for more than a year now. So I'm glad I got to get you on my podcast. So thank you so much.
I'm so glad.
Time to get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com.
Have you experienced the dreaded keto flu? Did you know that most of these symptoms are actually due to your body dumping excess electrolytes? This is where Element comes in. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt with no sugar. Element is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited to folks following a keto, low carb, or paleo diet. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, with none of the junk, no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. Everyone needs electrolytes, especially those on low-carb diets, or if you practice intermittent or extended fasting, if you're physically active, or sweat a lot. Add Element today and see how much better you feel and perform. Use the URL drinklmnt.com/Jimmy.